These are the items that my dad really hated on his first ever long distance hiking experience, and a couple items that he actually really loved. Last month, me and my dad hiked 96 miles through the Scottish Highlands on the West Highland Way, and on this 8-day adventure, we mostly wild camped. This was my dad's very first backpacking experience. He had never camped before, never even slept in a tent, so he was very much a beginner at all of this. And since we weren't sure if he was ever gonna do this again, we didn't want to spend a lot of money up front. So he used a lot of my backpacking gear. We bought some really cheap items, and a few items we invested a little bit more in to make sure that it was quality, just because likely he would use it for something else again in the future. And some of it worked and some of it did not. So the one item that he probably hates the most in the entire world, and he actually said that this was the worst part of the West Highland Way, is this sleeping mat. This is an inflatable pad. It's a Thermarest Neo Air X Therm, the regular one. So it's the right length for him. This is my sleeping pad actually, so he could borrow it from me. But in terms of length, it was all right. His issue was that he would roll off the mat in the middle of the night and he could just not get comfortable. I think it's because my dad is quite broad. He, for example, also needed a wide sleeping bag to make sure that he fit in. And I have to say that with this mat, when I lie on my back, I already notice that my hands are falling off to the sides. So I cannot imagine what that must have been like for my dad, actually. And it's something that you kind of have to get used to with every sleeping mat, I would say. When you turn around, it can get a little bit unstable. So I think that's why my dad struggled so much with rolling off of it. And yeah, this is the regular fit. You can also buy this in a wide fit. If I would have to buy this item again, I would maybe buy this in the rectangular shape for my dad instead of the mummy. For me, again, the mummy works fine, but maybe the rectangular one would have made it more stable for him and just a little bit more surface area so he wouldn't roll off that easily. Another thing that my dad thinks is not helping him either is that here you can kind of see the pattern going like this. And he was thinking that maybe a different pattern would have made it easier to not just roll off. I think there are different sleeping pads with different patterns, so I would have probably gone for something like that. It's really funny though, because even though my dad absolutely hated this sleeping mat, it is actually my favorite sleeping mat. I love this sleeping pad so much. I think it's really, really comfortable. I think it's warm. I absolutely love sleeping on this pad and would highly recommend it. Everyone has different preferences. Everyone has different bodies. So before you invest in a sleeping pad, make sure that you do your research and see what works best for your body type. Another thing that upset him so much about this sleeping mat is that it is really slippery. So even with this underneath, I got this like foam pad to put underneath just because I want to do as much as I can to protect the pad. These Thermarest pads are pretty pricey, so I just want to take care of my stuff. So I got him this foam pad to put underneath. It also adds maybe a little bit of extra warmth. He can sit on it. It should, in theory, also make it a little bit less slippery, because having the pad directly on the floor of your tent is more slippery than when you have this below. But for my dad, that just wasn't enough. He tried for one night to sleep on just this pad and he got really cold. So that didn't work for him either. And also it's just too hard as well. So we didn't find a proper solution. And after a couple days, it did get better, but he never really got comfortable. And the main reason was this sleeping pad. Another reason he couldn't get comfortable at night was because of his pillow. And in this instance, I got this really cheap pillow from Decathlon. I believe it was only maybe 10 bucks, something like that, maybe even cheaper. It looks pretty good, I would say. It's very simple way to blow it up. This is actually pretty annoying to let the air out as well. So it's really hard to inflate it, but then also to deflate it. So this was just terrible. And again, having something like this on your sleeping pad, it moves around a lot. So he lost the pillow very often when he would be rolling around. And in the end, he kind of made something with his thermals. He really didn't need to bring those. I told him, but he insisted on bringing thermal clothing to sleep in because he thought that he would get cold. And in the end, he kind of stuffed all of that with this pillow and then his other clothes just to make the pillow a little bit bigger and more comfortable and softer on the outside as well. He didn't like that this is so hard. Like these edges are really uncomfortable, I would say. So in this case, it was not a good idea to go with something so cheap. And especially because for my dad, sleep was really one of the hardest things. He did really great hiking. He really enjoyed the hiking, but the wild camping, he really did not enjoy, mostly because he couldn't get any sleep. And it's because of this sleeping pad and this pillow. So if we were to do something like this again, I'm not sure my dad would be open for that, but I would have to upgrade this pillow, and I wish I had invested a little bit more upfront in this pillow just because I know how important sleep is. Then one more thing that my dad didn't like, I wouldn't say he hated this, it just didn't work for him, and that is the darn tough socks. Again, this is something that I personally really love, and I did recommend him to go with the layering. So he had these Injinji toe socks. I personally really like toe socks. It takes the sweat more easily, I feel, and you have less chance of blisters on your toes. It takes some getting used to, but once you get used to them, they're really comfortable. And then when you pair them with darn toughs, I think it just makes the perfect sock combo. But for my dad, these darn toughs were really too thick. And luckily we did a lot of practice hikes or walks, I would say, before we got on the West Highland Way. So he figured out that these are too thick for him. So in the end, he ended up taking just these other hiking socks from Nomad. I think he just had these lying around. They're also hiking socks. They're just a little bit thinner. So the combo made it work perfectly for him. And yeah, I think that just goes to show that you should really test your gear before you go out on the trail and make sure that you're comfortable, especially with footwear. So I'm talking about hiking shoes, hiking boots, but also your sock combo. Just make sure that you are dialed in before you hit the trail, because you have to walk on these day in, day out. And if you get blisters, your hike is going to get so much more uncomfortable. So I think it was a really good idea of us to try these out. On the other hand, yes, the darn toughs might be a little bit more expensive. Their guarantee is insane. If you wear through these, you can go to the store and get a new pair without paying for them. So you basically buy socks once and you have them for the rest of your life. And I have to say, I have had my darn toughs for 2.5 years now, and I wear them, I would say, almost every week, and they are just unbreakable. It's insane. The quality is so insanely good. They just do not break. So I think that this is a good purchase regardless, because he can wear these for years to come just in his regular shoes, or if he goes hiking without the toe socks. I don't think this is a bad investment. So I would say, in terms of the things that he did like, of course, the Injinji toe socks. And while we're talking about clothes, I would also say that he really enjoyed this shirt. This is a merino wool shirt. It is from Icebreaker 200 Merino. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Merino wool doesn't smell really, so in that sense, it's really good. And then also it doesn't have the seams right on the shoulders, so you don't get irritation from your shoulder straps. And it is warm when it's cold outside, but when it's warm outside, this doesn't get too hot. It handles sweat really well, so it's super comfortable. Then one item that I really enjoyed, and my dad as well, because this helped us both, is this tiny little Flextail pump. It has these attachments. So this is the Thermarest attachment, but if you have a different kind of pad, there's different attachments for different brands. It inflates and deflates. It is so quick. I don't know. It just takes seconds basically to inflate your pad. You can also deflate with it, and this is just such a handy tool. Personally, I am about to leave for the Colorado Trail, which I'm going to be hiking this summer, and this is going to come in really handy at altitude because I don't want to use my precious breath to inflate my sleeping pad at night. It is super lightweight and it has a rechargeable battery inside. I don't even think that you have to recharge the battery very often because from what I've seen so far, it lasts a really long time. Then the final item that my dad didn't really enjoy, again, it's not so much hate, it's just that it didn't work for him. This bag is actually mine. It is a really old bag from the North Face. I got it maybe 10 years ago, so it's really old, but it's the one that kind of fit my dad, but obviously this is more made for someone my height, and my dad is slightly taller than I am, and I think it's also just made more for women maybe. So this bag didn't really work for him. We had to put the straps like all the way out for him to get through, and he just had a really hard time putting it on his back and taking it off. I don't know many 64-year-old men who hike, so I don't know if this is maybe just a thing that gets harder with age. That's definitely what my dad told me, that it's just because he gets older and he gets less flexible. But yeah, for me, when I put my bag on, it's not that big of a deal. When my dad has to put his bag on, it's almost an exercise in itself. And these get kind of twisted and it just wouldn't really work for him. Also, I don't know if this is because of the quality of the bag, or maybe just because it's old, but it ripped here after just a couple days use. So that's a little bit sad. I don't think this is necessarily a backpack that is very common nowadays to buy for long distance hiking. At least I haven't seen many people walk around with a North Face bag like this one. I would definitely not have bought this bag for my dad if we had invested in that upfront. But again, this was perfect because it was just a one-time trip. I'm not sure if my dad is ever going to do something like this again. And just for 8 days, it worked fine. And sometimes you just have to use the stuff that you have lying around. And in this case, it kind of worked, but it wasn't ideal. So if I were to advise someone to buy a bag for their backpacking trip, I would definitely go with something else. Then the final item that I would mention is something that he really, really loved, and that is his trekking poles. When we were practicing, he was very skeptical, maybe also because we live in the Netherlands and it's very, very flat here, so there's not much use for trekking poles, and he really thought that he wasn't gonna need them or use them. So luckily I managed to convince him to bring them anyways, and he loved them. There were so many sections on this trail that were kind of like up and down, getting over rocks and roots. Also hiking up Conic Hill. On the last day, we climbed Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in Scotland and the UK, and he definitely needed those trekking poles, not just for the uphills, but also the downhills and on the trail, also in the flat areas, just when you have to navigate uneven terrain or maybe you have to cross like little streams or whatnot. And this was the one item that my dad told me every single day that he could not have done the trail without these trekking poles. And I would have to agree with him. I love hiking with my trekking poles. I don't understand why I didn't get these way sooner. I've been hiking for the past 10 years or so, not long distance hiking, but I've done many, many trails. And I was always kind of struggling, and I thought that trekking poles were for old people. I hate to say that now, but it is definitely not. It is such a good investment. I personally have the Black Diamond trekking poles. They're super sturdy and they last a very long time. I really, really trust them to put my weight on them. My dad had just some cheap ones from Decathlon, and they were fine for this trail and for the usage or the pressure, I guess, he put on them. He didn't really have to ask much from it. The trail itself, the West Highland Way, wasn't super, super hard. If we were to do a more challenging trail, I think I would have invested in slightly higher quality poles, but for this purpose, they were great. And I think if you're a beginner hiker, it is perfectly fine to start with some of the cheaper trekking poles just to see if you like them. And they always come in handy. So these were some of the items my dad loved and hated on his first ever long distance hike. I am not sure if we're gonna do this again sometime soon. I think my dad is open to hiking some more and doing some other trails, but it would have to be more like something like hut-to-hut hiking. He saw all those people on the West Highland Way go to their hotels at night, and he was definitely jealous. He will not be wild camping again. That is completely fine. I think it's just really cool that he tried something new at 64 and he joined me on this hike. It was an amazing experience. If you want to check it out, I have all those videos on my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I share more videos about gear, about preparing for these hikes, and I also share my adventures with you. And next up is the Colorado Trail. I'll be heading out there in a couple of days, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So please stick around, and I will see you in the next one.